So here I am. It's fairly warm. This is the only jacket I brought, and the reason I'm wearing it is for bug repellent. Usually the bugs are absolutely insane right here. I used to take bear hunters up here years ago. Lots of bear sign right here. We're in grizzly country, black bear country, elk, moose. I wonder if there's enough service. There might be service here. If there is, I think I'll check on my maps. See if I can't get this see if I can find that mountain, try Cooney Peak, and identify it perfectly. Well, this has got to be it behind me. Randy Garibaldi. Oh, there's not enough service, you guys. Oh, that's it. For sure, that's it. Right behind me. That is where that wildlife biologist filmed that being with his friends. I guess they were rock climbing. Probably this time of year. Just in that bowl right there. So if you look on that peak on the right, where it slopes up that whole basin, right? You got the jagged teeth on the top, middle. They were up there, looking down. You see where it scoops up to the right and the snow slides? That's where that thing was, right there, that being, whatever you want to call it. So, here I am. Right in the middle of it once again, right? On my way to my friends. And everybody's working, etc. I'm getting stuff done, and I wanted to come up here and show you guys some more views along the way. And share some emails. Now listen to this. My Sasquatch story is pretty simple as the title of this email. Hi Steve, first of all, thanks for making your channel. It's a great place to go for people to talk and share stories in a safe place. Like you, I give 0 F's about what people think about me. I lived my life the way I wanted to, and have been a paramedic for most of all my working life here in Colorado. I've seen what humans are capable of doing to each other. And I have more fear of that creature than I do of any hairy man in the forest and swamps. As you say, if they wanted us dead, we'd be dead. Man is the most dangerous animal. Mostly retired now, but my healer pup loves to watch your B-rolls with the horses and seems to really love your voice. She's a smart dog. Okay. My Sasquatch story is pretty simple. I didn't see it, I heard it. I know what every animal in the forest sounds like. It was not a mountain lion. But that howl put the fear of God into me and chilled my blood. Like you said, the hair on my body was like wires. I was camping, and I threw it all in the car and left. It hasn't stopped me from camping, but I'll never go back to that place. I know I'm not welcome there. I've had other experiences where small rocks were being thrown at me, and I know I was alone, at least no other human beings around. And I've heard the knocking of small logs on trees. They seem to follow me around no matter where I go. I'm an avid photographer, and I think this is why I don't see them. They don't want me to photograph them with my high-end camera and lenses. This is off topic a bit, but my experiences have been UFO related. Shortly after I moved to Colorado, maybe around 79 or 80, I saw one on the ground at the neighbor's house behind the garage. I was living in the foothills at this time, not saying where either. And there was a cigar-shaped, gleaming, polished craft sitting upright behind the neighbor's garage. I believe the house was not even inhabited at the time. I slammed my brakes on, not believing what I was seeing. It just sat there motionless and no sound at all. I kept looking up the road to see if anyone was coming, so I asked, so I could ask if they saw it too. One of the times I looked away. When I looked back, it was gone, as in not there. No sound, it didn't fly away, almost like it did a dimensional shift and poof, not there. Since that time, I've seen them in the skies over Colorado. I think most people don't see them because they don't look up very much. Trust me, after that, I do a lot. I've seen them moving at speeds not possible, especially when they make a 90-degree shift in direction. Not sure if you've heard of Bob Lazar, but if you haven't, check out the documentary on Netflix. If you have, then you know he hasn't changed his story in 30 years. Much like you, he hasn't tried to make money off his story. He wants to be left alone. He is a scientist who says he worked at an annex site in Area 51. Not only did he see them, he worked on them, trying to reverse engineer them. He says repeatedly that they are definitely not reverse-engineered man-made craft. He is firm in the fact that we do not have the technology to create these things, and I, for one, believe every word he says. I have a very long-distance photo of one. I didn't see it in the viewfinder since it was so small, but it seems to have been disappeared from my hard drive. If I locate it, I'll send it to you. If you zoom in on it, you see an oblong something, as if a disc was at an oblong angle. My last experience was camping in the Great Sand Dunes National Monument. I was on a motorcycle trip and I woke up around 4:30 and could see through the top window of my tent. Left the rain fly off that night, and there were 3 stars in a diagonal line. I was thinking, oh look, Orion. But then one of the stars zoomed away at an incredible rate of speed. I reached for my pistol at that point just to make sure it was nearby. I kept watching them as the sun came up, since I wasn't going to be sleeping anymore that night. They started reflecting sunlight as the sun came up, the remaining 2, and eventually just winked out. Not sure I want any contact with them or a Sasquatch, but I believe both exist. Although I didn't think there was any relation between them. Anyway, those are my stories, and I'm sticking with them because I know what I saw and heard. Share it or not at your discretion, as I know the latter half is pretty much off topic. I've told a few people, and I think most of them think I'm a little nuts. As said, 0 F's given. Doug. No last name, please, if you share. Okay, got you, man. Thanks for sending that in. Another member of the club. I'm right at an intersection. Logging roads, there's bear crap everywhere. Forgot my rifle. Can you believe that? Forgot my rifle. Oh well. Feels calm here, but I always have a gun with me just because. The 1 in a million happens to me, right? All my luck, a grizzly bear is going to come out behind me and want to munch on this patch of green grass. Let me know if something comes behind me. Back on the UFO topic though, one time when I was up at Duffy Lake, I was on the quad, sitting in the box of the truck on the quad, videotaping, and somebody pointed out a object in the sky that appeared and sent it to me. And sure enough, there it was. And another time I was on the mountain in Pemberton facing Mount Curry, and something dark went behind me. Forget where that clip is. If the person that sent that to me is still here, send it again, maybe I'll share it, because that was something else. That was no bird, and definitely no plane, and it went straight 90 degrees behind me, way up off the valley floor this time of day, maybe a little later. Yeah, I've seen things in the sky. Alright, here's another one. Mustered up the courage to tell. Hello Steve, I mustered up the courage to email you today, and I'm okay with you using my name. My name is Glee Tolliver, 48-year-old First Nations Native woman. Some people assume I'm a man with a name like Glee. My heritage name, Indian name, is Sequim. My great-grandfather handed his name down to me from his late wife, my great-grandmother. I watch YouTube videos and appreciate that you help people invalidate encounters with Sasquatch. It's BS how people want to undermine those who encounter these beings. The incident happened to me back in 1994 and 95. The 3 of us are First Nations. Me and 2 other guys. We're in our territory up in STS'-AILES, Sales, formerly known as Chehalis Indian Band. I know you're familiar with this area as you speak about the Harrison, and we are connected to those mountains and rivers. Sales territory includes all of the Harrison Lake area. Right over there. Anyhow, we're at a popular creek. It's located on the reserve and is connected to the Harrison River. Excuse me, you guys. Dusty. There are huge potholes on this dirt road to get back there, and a lot of cedar and other trees. Also, it rains a lot, so the huge potholes are like little lakes. Keep this in mind. 3 of us were rod fishing. I don't remember the season though. We were laughing and throwing in our rods. We caught a few fish and piled them up on the spot, in one spot. It started to get dusk, but we kept on fishing. We continued being loud with laughter, yelling back and forth with each other. Across from us are a lot of trees, maybe about 50 feet across to the other side of the creek, maybe further. The 3 of us are about 10 feet apart from one another when this happened. All of a sudden we saw a huge rock come flying from across and landed in the water about 20 feet away from where we had our lines in. We started to laugh at first and said, "Holy F, did you see that rock?" And right at that moment we got stiff, as if we could feel a presence and being watched. We quickly moved towards one another, and then we decided, no, we're fine. So we moved apart from each other again. As we were throwing our lines back into the water, another huge boulder came flying into the water. This time it was a bigger boulder than the last one and thrown closer to us. It made a huge wave and splash. We could hear branches breaking. We all ran to each other again by our pile of fish, and I said, "Hey, what about our fish?" My one friend says, "Leave them. Leave them all for him." So two of us yelled out, "There's fish here for you." I quickly said, "No running, guys, because our elders have always told us if you bump into a Sasquatch, respect them. No eye contact, head down and walk away. And most of all, never run." And guess what? They both started to run, carrying our rods and gear, clanking as they ran. Well, to get out of there, you have to get around these enormous puddles. I caught up to the both of them because they were slipping and sliding, stepping into the puddles, and I said, "Stop running," in a whisper-like voice. He already knows we're leaving. The other friend says, "Don't look back, don't look back." Panic set in. We made our way back to our old four-door Nova. We all squeezed together in the front seat and were so scared. Well, the old car wouldn't start. We all had our heads down and we didn't want to look up. We were all looking at the key, turning and just praying for the damn car to turn. We're all swearing around, and then finally the car started up, but we still had to drive through these huge, deep, muddy potholes. We could still feel the presence, and none of us dared to look in that direction, which now was to the right of us. The car was having a hard time getting through the deep puddles and sounded like the old motor was about to stall out again. It seemed like it took us a really long time to drive out of the area, as the pressure of that feeling was getting to all of us. We kept saying out loud, "Let's get the F out of here." Finally we see the paved road. My friend just floored it. Still, we did not want to look back. We were like scared kids. I went to my sister's house. We all stayed together for a few hours talking about what happened. We went over it over and over again, asking each other if we saw him. "Did you see him?" "No, I didn't see him." "Did you see him?" All of us knew it was a Sasquatch. The other friend went back the next morning to see if our fish were still there, and they were all gone. Who knows who took them? Was it the Sasquatch or a lucky fellow native? My gut feeling tells me the Sasquatch bullied us out of them and took them all. Haha. It does sound funny, but we'll never know. Over 25 years later, when we see each other, still to this day we ask each other, "Hey, do you remember when Sasquatch made us leave all those fish?" We have no doubt at all that it was a Sasquatch. The ability to throw such huge boulders is humanly impossible, period. I'll never forget that day. I have no desire to go down there in my later years. I know they are there, in or in that area, but then again, they're all up in that area of woods. When I do visit home, I prefer to go for drives and not go through those woods anymore by foot. Luckily, we can access that specific place by vehicle these days. I don't ever want to encounter another one ever again. As a child, I remember another encounter, and it was in the same area. There were about 6 of us kids, and I was the only one with a bicycle. When we ran, the presence was snapping branches beside us. When we stopped, the presence stopped. Eventually, my cousin jumped on my handlebars and said, "Go." So I pedaled us out of there, and we left behind the other kids. We told our parents, but of course they downplayed it. Who knows, I could have been a cougar maybe. There are plenty of stories that our village has with encounters: the awful smell, stealing our smoked fish or hung up deer, of being watched lurking through the windows at night, screeching sounds or whistles, etc. We know they exist, and our elders told us about them from time memorial. There are even stories about Sasquatch capturing our people, and one particular story is about how the captured person came back to the people. Some also believe they travel through different realms, what others refer to as shapeshifters, 2 different aspects but used interchangeably. Anyone who mocks those who believe Sasquatch exists are simply ignorant, because once anyone experiences an encounter, you know they are real. As a child, I saw one looking into our bathroom window. Its eyes were bright red, I thought it was a dream, but as I got older, I realized it was a real memory. Our minds do not want to wrap around the idea that these beings are real. I could tell you other stories, but I'll leave it at that. Thank you for being the voice for those who need it. Take care, Steve. I wish you and all those who had an experience good health and well-being. I believe you help those who need validation. It really helps ease our minds a bit. Respectfully, Siquim, Glee. Glee, absolutely appreciate you for generously sharing that with us. And I believe that might have been near where you lived. Your community was near where Judy Chapman lived, right? Where was that? Judy Chapman lived Big Bar? No. Boston Bar. Boston Bar. Had the kids, saw that thing coming up to the house, took the kids and took off and ran, and they had a barrel of fish getting brined up, and it picked it up and winged it. That was a very, very popular experience shared back in the day. It was really talked about by a lot of different, wrote about it. John Green wrote about it. Everybody talked about that encounter, that experience is included in many of the old original experiences shared once people started talking openly about this, right? Man, it's wild country here. Wild country. Albert Ostman, another popular one. Remember that one? Albert Ostman got taken by one of these beings, and he stumbled back out of the woods into some loggers not too far from here as the crow flies. Would have been that direction. He came out of the woods. Maybe 1 or 2 valley drainages over. 2. Right there. Yeah. Glee, if you could, I know you got a pile more stories, and if you're still here with us here at this channel, do us all a favor and share some more, would you? You got some knowledge, share it, share some more with us, all right? Really, really appreciate that. Okay, another one. It's titled, I Told Them I Saw Bigfoot. Hey Steve, really appreciate the work you're doing, providing a place for people to share the stories without the fear of judgment. Decided to share this. I'd appreciate you not mentioning any names or locations. For instance, this instance happened in either the late 60s or early 70s. I would have been about 7 or 10 years old when it happened. It was before we had cable and the TV stations all turned off at midnight. My family had traveled to spend a weekend with some extended family. On this particular night, everyone but my cousin and I had gone to bed, and we watched TV until it turned off. My cousin fell asleep on the couch, and I was sitting in a recliner. I'd turned the recliner around so I could look out the sliding glass doors. There's a big porch on the back side of the house, and beyond that was a fishing pond. I could sit in the recliner, look out over the pond, and watch the stars. I'd placed the recliner about 2 feet from the door so I could see better. Eventually I fell asleep in the recliner. Sometime later, I don't really remember what time it was, I heard a sound that woke me up. When I woke up, there was a Bigfoot looking through the door at me. As I can recall, he was only about 6 feet tall. When I realized what was looking through the door at me, I screamed really loud and pushed backwards so hard the recliner flipped over. Within just a few seconds, everyone in the house is in the living room asking me what happened. When they told them I saw a Bigfoot, they all started telling me what they thought I saw. They said I had seen something, but just misidentified it. To be fair to them, they were woken up in the middle of the night and could probably only rationalize it was something they knew. I've hunted and fished my entire life, but there have been times when I get spooked going out in the dark. There have even been some places that I wouldn't go until there was enough light to be able to see. Apologize for this message being a little lengthy, but I applaud you for taking the time to do what you do. Take care. God bless, Jay. That was a short one, Jay. And if you get a chance, you may want to send us back what you saw. The description of what you saw looking in the door at you. Got to do my 360, right? And that would be good. Thank you for the kind words, man, and sending in your story. Absolutely appreciate it. My older brother had an experience. Hey, Steve. I've always had an interest, but I never had an experience. I was telling my older brother about your channel and found out he had one. He's 7 years older than me and used to do a lot of deer hunting with my dad when I was too young to go along. Turns out he caught a glimpse of one of these creatures one day while hunting a friend's property in central Michigan. I know my brother. I know what he sounds like when he's talking shit or telling stories, and I also know what he acts like when he's scared or traumatized. He wasn't lying, he was just not that good of an actor. I couldn't believe that he kept that to himself for 30 years. I'd have sworn I'd heard every story my brother had to tell, and he's not shy, especially around me. His story was identical to a million stories on your channel. He saw a huge, hairy biped walking quickly away from a distance close enough to know it wasn't human, and it scared the shit out of him. When he tried to tell my dad and the guy they were hunting with, they shut him down and told him that they must have seen another hunter. I guess I now know why my brother seemed to lose interest in deep woods. I now know why my brother seemed to lose interest in deep woods hunting trips all at once. I can't believe that he kept that to himself all those years. Just another data point that proves the pattern you've identified on your channel. You always say that people would be amazed how many of their friends and family have had experiences, and now I know you're right. I'll save your name. There you go, man. Glad you're picking up what I'm putting down. This title, I actually believe her. My mother has had this Bigfoot encounter story she's told my whole life that neither me, my brother and sister, or my dad ever really were convinced about. She's also had a couple stories about thinking a coyote we hit with our car one time may have been a shapeshifter. Something I think now would be referred to as a skinwalker. Anyway, through your channel I've come to a place where I actually believe her. Here's her story in her own words below. She's 57 years old now. It was a very long time ago. I was 14 years old working for CEDA at Oak Ridge Forestry Service, or the Ridge-Dun Forestry Services. I was with my supervisor. We went together to an area called or nicknamed R. We were plotting the forest for logging road. I went one way, he went the other. As I work, I hear something. Looking around, I see this face, not a human face. The animal was about 200 yards away, possibly less. It had red-brown hair and was looking right at me. It had a long, big nose. I could see its skin beneath the hair. It was at least 6 feet tall, and I was petrified. I ran, knowing the map, and headed for the direction of the gravel road. It was probably a couple of hours until I made it to the road, and I told my supervisor, and also when we got to the Forest Service station, I told this to our boss. He said other people had seen this, and that this 6-foot animal was on the endangered species list for the government. Thanks for your time, Steve. You can share my name, I don't care. I'm sure my mother would be elated if by chance you read her story on your channel. I'll happily share the video with her. I already told her about your channel, but she's not online much anyway. Alright, I don't know when you sent this, but I hope it's not too late, and you share it with her, man. Share it with her. It's hard with this bright sky behind me, reflecting. Okay, let's get another one out. No bears. Warm afternoons is the best time for a bear in the spring. And they're rutting right now, it's mating season, so I'm just being a little more vigilant with my eyeballs. Moses Lake, Washington. Hi, my name is Veronica Rutkowski. You can use my name. I live in Moses Lake, Washington, and used to work graveyard shift in what we call the base here. I had to walk from house to house checking on my disabled clients. This happened 5 years ago towards wintertime. I walked out of one house ready to cross the corner to my next house when I heard two things whooping at each other. I stood dead in my tracks and listened again. I heard a whoop again. I turned to my left, about 100 yards from me was an empty field, and I saw two large black outlines walking about 15 feet from each other. I whooped back just to see if it would answer. And it did. Then one stopped and turned my way. It was not tall, huge, and not the size of... It was tall, huge, and not the size of a regular man. That part of the base is dark and leads to more unpopulated space. When I saw them move faster, I realized the neighbor's dog was going crazy in the direction of these two things. I ran and tried to get the other coworkers to come and see, but when we got outside, they were gone. We even walked to the edge of the field and we saw nothing. I've told the story to my family and I love how excited they get to hear it. I'm hoping that was my time to see and hear them. Keep up the great work, love your show, and how we feel good telling you our stories. Great love from Washington. All right. Heard and shared and respected. Another one, right? So, man, I I'm going to be looking around more than I normally do just for those facts I just stated. The bears are running. And I'm at an intersection and I got green grass all around me, brand new willow popping up. I'm basically sitting in the middle of a bucket of chum for bears and I forgot my rifle. Fort Campbell Army Base. Hello Steve, good day. I'd like to start off with saying thanks for all your work you put into your channel. Okay, so far back to 1978. Very backwoods, Tennessee, approximately 60 miles from Fort Campbell, Kentucky Army Base. We lived in the middle of nowhere with just a few houses along a 5 or 6 mile stretch of gravel road snaking through the hills. One night as we sat in our living room, we started hearing what sounded like something very heavy running down our long driveway just before bedtime. My dad, being a backwoods boy all his life, knew something was strange about the sound and how heavy it was. He grabbed his rifle as usual before going out the door. He had my stepmom and Toby behind him. My dad yelled and told us kids to go to the bathroom and stay in there. We lived in a tin shack, so you could hear what was being said easily through the thin walls. As we stood scared to death, just by the tone and fear in my dad's voice, we heard both of them say, "What the hell is that?" I was way too big to be a person and way too big for a bear. The whole time they were outside, we could hear the rocks popping on the gravel road from a distance. About 2 minutes later, our whole front yard was filled with military trucks, men with M4s at the ready. A shitload of them took off in the direction of the thing my parents saw. About 6 stayed behind and started yelling at my dad to drop his gun and get the F in the house and stay there until they had finished the business they had at task. To this day, I'm not sure what the military was doing out there, but I think I have a good idea since my dad said it was a goddamn Bigfoot. Fast forward 2013-14, my son and I went mushroom hunting and found small footprints and a few small handprints in a low spot in the mud. This was after smelling a puke-inducing stench in the area. Also, a few months before, a Bigfoot sighting had been reported and made the St. Louis, Missouri news. We were only a field away from where they reported seeing a creature, so I always had my suspicions of the tracks. Anyway, I babbled enough. Thanks again for all your efforts. Ken Johnson. Ken, appreciate it, man. I'm guessing you didn't hear any gunshots, otherwise you would have shared that with us, right? Getting chewed on. Okay, comes another one. Ontario trucker. Hey Steve, I mentioned this encounter in a few comment sections of other videos, but I guess this is to make it official. I'm a long-haul trucker running from Ontario to Western Canada and returning usually through the US back to Ontario. One night I slept in the Sault Ste. Marie. Got up and started my day. I got up to the Montreal River, approximately 1 hour north, and was driving by Beta Lake, B-E-T-A Lake. This lake is shaped like an oven mitt, and at the tip of the thumb there's an opening. I see this guy standing there facing me. My first thought was a camper, and I smiled, and then I realized he was all black. Black bear black. Head, face, arms, legs, everything. My next thought was, why is he all black? Is this a bear? But why is it standing? But it's a human silhouette. A black bear standing would have an inseam, maybe 18 inches max. This lasted approximately 6 seconds, that has stuck with me ever since. I didn't realize it may have been a Bigfoot because I always thought of it as a West Coast thing. Then I heard of a sighting in Grassy Narrows, Ontario, west of Manitoba. I'm thinking, how would such a thing survive there? I started looking into it. I reported to another site in Ontario, and the guy pegged my sighting on a map, and about 5 to 10 miles north of there were 3 other sightings pegged. He was supposed to send me the details, but never did. I served 21 years in the military and have absolutely no time for BS. This email is to further confirm that these beings exist. They are everywhere. I have 50 acres and I go down to the back with my 12-gauge slug, triple-odd buck, slug, triple-odd buck, slug, because plus more in my pocket. Even doing yard work, splitting wood, etc. I have bear spray and usually my 12-gauge. Everything is a statistic. You can choose which column you fall in. Cheers, Guy, Doug Turner. Yeah, no shit, you can choose, can you? Kind of like I made a poor choice before I came here. Poor choice meaning forgetting my damn gun. Not the 1 in a million, it's always the 1 in a billion with me, but if you've heard a bunch of my hunting stories, you know that 1 in a million has happened to me a lot. I don't know why. Alright, another one. I've got thousands of emails. Unmistaken, it was on 2 legs. Well, I just want to share a story both my dad and mom experienced shortly after they got married in '66. Dad grew up in Oklahoma and moved away after returning from serving his time in the military. He met the woman whom he would later marry and would become my mom in another state. Dad grew up in the woods and was an avid hunter and fisherman. He knew the hills and valleys well. Dad and mom passed away a few years ago, and I feel this one particular story they shared with the family should be told. Over the years, he had a number of strange experiences. This took place in what was once known as Indian Territory. Dad wasn't the type of guy to want attention or make up crazy things. It just wasn't his style at all, or mom's. They both believed in being truthful and had great faith in God. Dad had hunted several remote properties that he had permission to be on. A number of them didn't have any cattle or crops. My guess is that oil companies had leased the land and maybe that's why they weren't being used. Dad had found something peculiar on this one property that included a hill and a creek. The creek was just a wet weather one that was usually dry most of the year. While hunting, he found what he described as a marker that pointed to something hidden. In all his years hunting that area, he never once encountered other people or found any sign of human activity. There was no trail or private road leading into the place. He had regularly been all over the entire fenced acreage since a small boy. So, when he came upon this marker, it really got his curiosity up. The only reason for it being placed in the creek that made any sense to him was that something valuable must have been hidden nearby. Why else would it have been put there in the middle of nowhere? He couldn't find any footprints or other tracks leading to or away. Despite searching all over the area thoroughly, he couldn't find any sign that something had been buried or hidden. Still, he wasn't satisfied that it was just nothing. So after Mom and he got married, one afternoon he drove her way out there to show her the peculiar marker in the dry creek bed. From where they had to park the car, they still had to walk a long ways to reach the scene. By the time they made it to the creek bed, the sun was setting. The object that Dad referred to as a marker was now gone. It had been well anchored in the ground, and Dad first saw it. When Dad first saw it, and he of course never disturbed it, there hadn't been any flows of water in the creek since then. So who moved it and why? Dad had no answers, and it all just brought more questions. It was getting dark fast, and they decided to head back to the car. True to Dad's history of being a hunter, he brought along a rifle. The leaves had dropped off most of the trees as winter was approaching. It was a quiet night with no wind. The route they had taken was along a cross fence. You had to walk parallel with it in either direction. During their walk back to the car, they began hearing footsteps crunching the leaves on the other side of the fence where the trees had all grown along. Dad said it was unmistakable that whatever was walking was two-legged. It was following them in the dark. He told Mom to head out with him further away from the fence and the tree line out to the middle of the pasture. This way, if it charged at them, Dad could easily shoot it in time and see it coming. He had a round in the chamber ready to go. If they walked fast, it would walk fast. If they suddenly stopped, it would stop. This went on for a long time, despite their discussion of Dad having a loaded rifle. Mom said it felt like death, and that whatever was following them intended to kill. She told me that it was the scariest experience she'd ever lived through. It followed them a long distance. The sound of leaves being crunched as it walked was something you couldn't ignore. Mom wasn't sure they'd live to see another day. She said that despite the leaves having mostly fallen from the trees, whatever was following them, you couldn't see a silhouette or shape of any kind. The fence that bisected that pasture terminated right where the car was parked. Mom and Dad hurried to make it to the car. They had to climb over the fence in order to get away. Mom said it was terrifying trying to get the car unlocked and then get inside and get the door shut and locked behind quickly. Whatever had followed all that way back was just a short distance away. They couldn't get out of there fast enough. Thankfully, the car started and they made it safely back to civilization. That was the last time Dad or Mom ever set foot on that property. You gotta picture that, you guys. Outdoorsman, confident guy with a gun, and his wife, and never set foot on the property ever again. Didn't even see it. That's being scared, right? Tell you what, you want something to happen, you just go hiking, I don't know, actually probably put a sleep bag down right here and sleep here by yourself a handful of nights and see what happens. Anywhere in these mountains around me. The coastal mountains of British Columbia, especially these ones right here. So much is going on in these mountains right around me. It's rugged, man. These mountains are absolutely not horse friendly. Steeper than shit. When you try to climb these mountains, it is so brutal. The thick underbrush. But once you get in there, it's pretty cool in the timber. As long as nothing bugs you. Oh, this one's very long. I'll have to save that for another time because I gotta get going. Alright. Idaho Archery Elk Hunt. Again, Idaho. See, I thought I'd forward this to you again. I don't want to be a bother, and I'm sure you can't get to nor reply to all the data heading your way. I love and appreciate what you're doing, giving folks a forum to discuss the subject matter. Thanks again, Dave. Steve, 2 years ago, I was hunting in central Idaho during the archery elk season, August 30th, September 30th. Now, I've hunted the same area for 30 years. There are 5 of us who have regularly camped together during this time, but our hunts are solo and usually with one guy in tandem. We've always talked about Sasquatch while in camp. Why? Why would you do that? One guy had an encounter 25 years ago in the vicinity of Elk City, a bit farther north of where we hunt, 3 hours or so. I have no doubt about his encounter when he has shared it on occasion. He knows they exist. I've always been skeptical. Then the tracks showed up. I found mine on an old decommissioned logging road, 17 inches in length and 6 inches across. The outline of a footprint with all toes clearly visible. What got me was the big toe and the next toe were splayed out by a rock embedded in the ground. When this print was made, the big toe was pushed to the left of the rock and the next toe to the right. I dropped my bow and my pack and carefully crawled around for more sign and found none. I was hesitant about sharing my experience with my hunting partners and kept quiet until a few weeks later, towards the end of the elk hunting season. I spoke up around the campfire as we were all engaged in conversation and enjoying a few beers and whiskey. I described in detail what I found and where. This country is fairly remote. No vehicle access into where we hunt, and in 30 years I've ran into 2 or 3 people. People just don't go here. It is remote, rugged country. One guy said, interesting. Then described how he and another guy had been farther up the same drainage a week later. There are beaver ponds at the top just before the mountain goes vertical. A nice creek flows through the drainage except where the beaver ponds are at. He said they found human-looking footprints everywhere. Like a lady, size 7, just walking around in the mud on the outskirts of the beaver ponds. That gave me chills. This is a few miles up the same drainage where I saw my track. Then another buddy, the one who had his encounter 25 years ago, piped up, "Oh, they're here. Remember the TP structure at Jurassic Park?" We have names for each drainage and area we hunt. We found a teepee-looking structure years ago. Evidently these creatures create them as a signal to others. He went on to say it was relocated about 400 yards further up the drainage. I have seen this myself. No man, no group of men could build this without equipment. He continued saying that he saw a perfect print in the ground where a ground squirrel had dug up a pile of soft dirt. He stopped there, pointed out to his son and a buddy hunting with him that day. He said, "Just to be clear, look at this," pointing out the track. His son and friend were like, "F." Then he said, "Okay, we all see this, right?" They all agreed. Then he took his boot and wiped the track clean and said, "Let's go kill elk." I can't explain the track I saw, nor the tracks my hunting buddies saw, all within about a 10 square mile area. We know this country like the backyard, having climbed all over the mountains for the past 30 years. We've killed deer, elk, bear, goats, grouse, and mountain lion. There's something else out there leaving tracks, which I and my buddies cannot explain. Like I said, my one buddy knows they exist, and I am a solid, I think they exist. I love your videos. Thanks for sharing your experience and those of others. Kind regards, Boise, Idaho. Did you say to use your name? See how many times I got to go back and do that, you guys? Okay, using your name. David Carlson. Welcome to the club, David. You know. You know they are there. I know they're there. I didn't ask them to be here. I'm going to put the zoom lens in the camera for a minute and let her rip back there for you guys to check it out, alright? And then I got to carry on. Got to carry on my travels. So there you go. I take you to a new place, a place you're somewhat familiar with. I don't know the correct spelling of Tri-Cooney. I'll see if I can post it up in a bit, but if you're curious and you want to Google it up, Google up the Tri-Cooney Sasquatch, Tri-Cooney Peak, Mountain, whatever you want, Sasquatch video, and you'll find it. It's right there behind me. Dead center is where I believe those guys videotaped that being, walking on that slope right there. Would have been more snow, well, no, probably the same amount of snow right there.